Let's talk about different ways we can set up FlexiCapture exports. I'll go ahead in this project and open up my document definition. And if I click on Document Definition Export Settings, we can see that we got an existing default export destination. If I click Add, a wizard is launched that will help me walk through setting up an export. The first thing to take notice of is the different default options. We can export to data files and to image files, to databases, to SharePoint, and we can also create an export script. Also, it's important to take note of your ability to set up a conditional export by selecting a form field and specifying whether that field is empty or is not empty. Or we're selecting a field now, and you see we've got a default is empty or is not empty, or has a certain value, or does not have a certain value. That's a really powerful capability that will prevent you from having to write scripted exports just because you need some sort of trigger event to fire off the export in the first place. Another important thing to focus on is these document conditions that you should take advantage of. The default documents contain no errors is a very appropriate setting for production. And it means what it says. Any batch that contains documents with errors will not be exported. They will go instead to the exception queue. You can also set up another export and export path for documents that do contain errors. This would be really useful if you've turned off verification, so you know you're going to get some exported documents which contain errors and some of which will not contain errors. The ones that contain errors can be pointed to a place where downstream attention can be paid and the errors resolved. And then when I'm doing demonstrations or teaching classes, I like the setting errors are irrelevant. And that means that at any time I can choose to export a batch and whether or not I export it whether or not it contains errors without any problems. When we're exporting to data files, we can walk through this wizard and focus on the target. This allows you to specify the naming of export files and export folder structures. The export path contains the name of a subfolder that will be created to contain the exported data. And by editing the template, we can add different naming conventions. So we switch to advanced. So we can select a batch name or use something like the source file that was placed in a hot folder as the output naming convention. You can give it a custom name. So there's a lot of capabilities here. I could name output files based on the document definition name, and then again the source file, which is the import file name as I mentioned. I can add both those tags. I can also do folder creation with a path name separator. And I can also put an index field in so that whatever a certain field's value is, it can be part of the export name. And that's great. So a lot of capabilities here in this editing template. There are several file types available for export. If you take a look at this drop list, you can see some of them. And we select XLS right here. And I want to point out we have the ability to map fields that have disparate names. So whether we're going to an Excel spreadsheet or to a database, we have that capability. We can click on this Setup Fields Mapping button and see the interface that we're presented with. And that interface shows both the fields in our target database as well as the field names on the form. If they're named differently, we can use the drop list to go ahead and select a different name or type in a new name.